Got it, Chris.
Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Ulysses Town Board. Today is July 11th, 2023, and I'll call the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. May we please have a roll call?
Sure. Mr. Short,
Present.
Ms. Olson,
Present.
Mr. Boggs,
Present?
Ms. Weatherby.
Present. Thank you. We have an agenda that was presented, circulated, and posted last week. Any alterations, additions, subtractions, the board would like to propose? If not, I would accept a motion to approve as presented.
Move to approve as presented.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. That moves us right along to the privilege of the floor. Any member of the public is welcome to speak for up to 3 minutes. I'm just getting my timer going. And on matters you feel may be of interest to the town board. We'll always start in person and then move online back and forth. If anybody would like to speak, would anybody like to speak? Sure, please go ahead.
Sure, so I just forgot that the procedure is to write the reports for committees and send them ahead of time, so.
No, it's okay. No, that was for one meeting. So you're
Oh,
welcome to give
okay.
it during the meeting itself if you
Okay.
want, or you can do it now.
Either way. I guess I'll just do it since I'm talking, it's not very long, but, so this is on the Conservation Sustainability Advisory Council. At our last meeting, we had a discussion about several things, but the one I wanted to bring up here was, the porous pavement sort of idea of the back parking lot came up again, and, Andy Hillman, this time, I think Mary brought up that the town was, back to working on this as a project.
Yeah.
Thinking about for this year, and our liaison Mary, and so Andy Hillman had a lot more information than he had the last time we had that discussion quite a while ago about his experiences and a parking lot that he'd actually, designed and they installed, and that's been working well for many years, and he had a whole bunch of ideas and other people chimed in of ways that it could potentially be done back there, including like, coupling porous pavement with actual regular asphalt in the area where people mostly drive, and having the more porous areas where people park, and along the edges, we could potentially have some vegetation.
Yeah, Kate had a,
lot.
there was someplace, Botanic Gardens
Yeah,
in
and
Maine.
so then Kate Darkwood, who's on our committee, is traveling right now, and she went to the Botanic Garden in Maine. This is what made me remember that I was actually supposed to write a little thing suggesting that Andy, he said he would be really willing to meet with you guys and talk through that potential cost options and ideas, including some vegetation in different areas. But Kate had a great picture, which I can send. I'll write this down and send it so you don't forget, but at the Maine Botanic Gardens where they did exactly that. They had like in the area where you really road, regular pavement, and then in the areas where, that rain runoff where you park, the porous asphalt. And so anyway, our committee wanted to encourage, since it's in the project thinking development stage, Randy said he'd be really happy to come and give the board a presentation, answer questions. He said he has a presentation that he can adapt from. So it's worth thinking about.
I'll just tell you and the board, I've already arranged for him to be here on August 8th.
Oh, great.
Awesome.
Well, he's behind, so I
No,
didn't
no,
get-
that's-
I didn't get the rest of the loop there.
No, there was no loop. I was just gonna let the board know tonight, so I appreciate
No, I
that
mean, he didn't
introduction.
tell me that he made that connection, so anyway,
No, it's great, thank you.
slow to record. Thanks.
No, that's great information, thank you. No, I think that it's always nice to have written reports, just because it helps codify it in the minutes. But in that particular, there's so much on the agenda, I didn't want people to get left out, and still get through a tremendous amount, so, you were right on schedule.
Okay, yeah,
Awesome.
and our next meeting is August 9th. It's gonna be in person, either here or outdoors, if it's nice at 7:15.
Wonderful. Excellent. Is there anybody online who wishes to address the board? we will continue moving along to municipal board and staff reports and announcements. Is there, seeing as how Linda's on, Linda, would you like to update us on your committee?
Yes, we met last night and, well, we met yesterday in the morning with RCAP and worked through, the survey questions as well as looking at the processes for managing it. And so we got a lot of information that we took later the afternoon when we had our WSPP committee meeting. And so we pretty well finalized the survey questions and we're just working on reformatting them in the form. And we'll have those available. And we had a lot of discussion about the managing the information that we received back. And so we're working through that and we'll have more information on that for the town board when we get a little more information on it. So that's what we're working on. And actually probably the important thing is that we're targeting the beginning of September for getting the survey out. So that's our energy level to try to make that happen. Okay.
Well, thank you and the rest of the committee members for your yeoman's work on this endeavor. It's very important. Excellent. Are there any board members who wish to make any announcements about committees that they liaise to or serve on? Anything rising to?
Don't have anything.
Just follow on to Linda. So the questions have been vetted by quite a few people. So Elizabeth Thomas is cleaning that up. So then we'll want to make an appointment with you guys to come in and go over those. And then following that will be the in the same meeting, hopefully to talk about the survey and with RCAP.
Okay.
And so we think we can get the questions part done first, put that behind us, and then we'll talk about the RCAP thing. So
Sounds great.
hopefully we can do that sooner than later.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Keep me in the loop.
Yep. Well, certainly.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and so our key target is for the next we're presenting to the town board on the 8th of August. So
I have that already. Thank you for being my first signer upper for that meeting.
okay.
Wonderful. Did you have something?
I was just gonna add that.
Awesome. Fantastic. I'm glad to hear it's moving along expeditiously. That's great. The only thing I would say add right now is that on the 25th of August, Gordon, the village mayor, and I are going to be beginning the negotiations with New York State Parks on the licensing agreement on behalf of the LDC. And so we're going to find out what is non-negotiable from the state's perspective and what is highly negotiable. So I think we're at that meeting most largely going to hear what is non-negotiable and then be able to move on. But that project is moving along really well. And it's all in the state's hands right now, but the Boy Scouts did sign their purchase offer. State purchase offer, so it's now the slow wheels of state government land acquisition commence. But it's a good project. And so anything else, Carissa, did you have any updates?
So one comment on reading through the packet and stuff. In most, or if not all places, it was referred to as Camp Barton. I'm trying to break people into using Three Falls. Are we still going to call it Three Falls?
So it's the LDC is called Three Falls, but the property is going to be named by New York State. So and they're going to pick what name they want. We might be able to have input. That's actually one of the things we're going to talk about on the 25th. But the park itself has not been named yet.
Okay.
So that's why it's still being called Camp Barton, because we have no other to be determined
name.
TBD
Okay.
State
All right.
Park.
All right.
So.
Barton Falls.
Well, I will share that one member of the LDC board doesn't like the Three Falls name and suggested we take it back to negotiation, and then the village and the town both said, absolutely not. We got a name through. It didn't offend anybody. We're not spending board meetings on
Yeah.
a
no, hopefully not.
new name to an
No.
LDC.
Take your inputs, the name of the park.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we suggested. So, excellent. So I think at this point, I'd like to welcome, I was gonna welcome Rachel to the table because I think then everybody can see online, everybody can see in the room. Rachel has, which I believe all of you know, Rachel, has just been a gift this year that she was already on staff when we needed to take over the youth employment program. And so I thought she's been doing a really great job, and I wanted the board to hear what this program entails, because for the last number of years, and I actually don't know how far back it goes at RYS, the Rural Youth Services Program was managing it. Do we know how far back that goes?
I think it was in the 90s.
So this is our first year of managing it in-house, and the decision has been made in conjunction with Tompkins County, Rural Youth Services, and the Youth Commission, with village and school and town representatives, that it's now permanently moving into the town, because it is a very awkward legal and insurance situation to have contract employees or contractors oversee town employees, and that's what in fact the youth workers are. So this is the county is highly in favor of us bringing it in-house, and so that has fortunately that comes with funding from Tompkins County as well, and funding from the village. So it doesn't have serious funding implications, except I think Rachel is doing a really good job stretching our money. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. I just have a short report. So I had what I think is a pretty large number of applicants. I have 34 applicants. I so far have been able to place 21 of them at 12 different locations. And I think there were 13 placements last year. So it's been a little bit of a bump. But again, we did have a large number of applicants, and I anticipate, so I have 21 and I anticipate hiring a second one by next week. Their ages, the applicants, the teams that are working are ages 14 to 19. And I have among the 12 locations, I think about half of them are tried and true. Ulysses Philomethic Library has 2, the Teganic Park has 3, probably 4 by next week. T-Bird Summer Rec has 3 CITs. They're actually all 8th graders. The Floating Classroom, which is educational research vessel in Ithaca. There's 1 youth crew employee that I was able to hire for them. T-Bird Village Office has 1. She's helping in the code enforcement office and in the clerk's office. T-Bird DPW has 1 employee. Tremors Ice Cream, and then Ithaca Vintage, I believe I'll have 1 there by next week, and that's the antique store over on Route 96 up by the north end of the village. Brand new employers include Bet the Farm Winery. He's got 2 in their vineyard right now. Jenny Creek Flowers, which is a flower farm in Trumansburg, has 3 employees. Main Street Market has 2, and Wide Awake Bakery has 1. So it feels like a good range, and it's a bunch of really great kids. I shouldn't say kids, I should say youth workers or youth employees. One of the things that I worked on this, which I think is new, was to organize sexual harassment training, which was tailored to adolescents. An adolescent audience. I worked with Midstate COSH, which is the Midstate Council for Occupational Safety and Health. And they're a nonprofit based in Tompkins County that provides training and services to workers in a number of counties in the Southern Tier and Finger Lakes. And so, and it's kind of unique, I think, in that it was peer-to-peer training. There was an adult facilitator there, but one of the things they do is they hire, that organization hires teenagers, they train them, and then those teams present the content and do it in an interactive way for other teams. So it was kind of an interesting,
That's awesome.
new way to do it. Yeah, I think it worked well. We did that at the school in late June, and so I've had a good relationship with the school. A lot of, since I was new and had very little, like sort of little to go on, I was able to get a lot of help from the school guidance office over at high school, which was really beneficial. I would say essential, yeah. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm glad to take them now or later.
Are all these youth workers, is this their first job?
Most of them, yes. I think there were a handful that may have done a stint at SureSave or have had some sort of helping, like getting paid to help neighbors with lawn work or something like
Yeah.
that. But most of them are brand new employees. And even the one that's like there's a couple that are older, and I think for whatever reason, they are also new to the workforce. The one that's working at White Oak Bakery, he's 18, but it's his first job. Yeah.
We saw, I remember Ethan talking about this, that there were a number, there was that last year of youth employment. And so we're actually, last year, we were catching people up. And I think we're continuing to see some of that with COVID. And then not really comfortable necessarily even the year after COVID shutdown. So 2020, 2021, youth employment numbers were significantly curtailed in a lot of places. So due to safety issues.
And I just wanted to say that among the 34 I interviewed or applied, some of them withdrew, some of them got jobs elsewhere. There were just a couple that I had to say, please apply again next year. And a couple of them I'm still kind of feeling around for things that would be appropriate for that, but I feel like most of them were satisfied with the match I was able to make for them. Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say for those that haven't been placed yet, are there opportunities that might come up like later in the summer or with grassroots or something coming in? I don't know how that works with grassroots or other opportunities if people can come in mid-July. I mean, there's still a month and a half left. Of summer.
Yes, indeed. That had not occurred to me.
I don't know. They might have their own
Grassroots.
stuff that we might not even want to.
Grassroots,
Yeah.
grassroots doesn't hire anybody.
Oh, they're all volunteers. That's
Yeah.
right.
That's how they get out of paying payroll taxes.
That is true.
Yeah.
There are a couple of farms that wanted to work with us, but then realized they couldn't quite swing it in that particular, like May was tricky. So, but they asked to circle back. So I'm wondering if potentially August or September, or even into harvest, like we could potentially get some more folks to work.
I get the newsletters from Jenny Creek. I don't know
Yeah.
if anybody else does. And she was raving about her helpers,
Okay.
That's
Oh, good.
wonderful.
that she didn't realize how much she was doing by herself and didn't think she needed the help until she had the help. And
Oh, good, that's
she
good to
was
hear.
saying they're very helpful and she actually was able to take the afternoon off and hang out with her son or something like that. So it was a very
Nice.
nice review. If you don't, I can forward it to you.
That's great.
That's
Thanks.
great. Well, it kind of preempts a little bit of what I'm gonna say in the update a little bit later on, but because we're going through some transitions with our rural youth services contract negotiations, we have more money from Tompkins County for youth development that we need to spend down this year. So we're now working with Tompkins County and working with Rachel to actually stand up an employment program for the fall also. So hopefully, literally every youth employee or youth worker who wants to work, maybe you can match make your way to finding them some experience, because sometimes June is just not a good fit for employers or employees. So I think that there's a lot of room for good growth. So any other questions?
I just want to comment, I had that job for a while and I think it's just such an awesome program. It's just a win-win for everybody in the community, kids, employers. Michelle started in that program, and also Roxanne's daughter Marina worked on the floating classroom.
Oh, nice.
She was the first, that's when we started that.
The first
job.
employee
First
that,
one.
oh, cool. Good to know. Yeah.
And 34 people, that's a lot,
Yes.
because, when you were doing it, weren't that many, right?
Yeah, around
15.
I think the school counselors seemed surprised at how many applications we got. And then also how many kids actually showed up for their interviews. Like everyone just seemed really motivated this year.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
And then they're doing their jobs too.
Yeah.
So that's like even a third win. So, well, that's just wonderful. Well, Rachel is around. So glad to have her. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here tonight. Any other questions before we? You're always welcome to stay for the entire town board meeting, but I appreciate you may not want to.
I had to run the rehearsal. 'cause I'm
That's
in the
right.
musical.
That's right.
Thank you for having
Thank you
me.
so much.
Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. And then Michelle, come on down.
I didn't have a chance to say it at a good time, but I don't think we could say enough about how important it is, the description of the sexual harassment training that Rachel described. I think that youth employment program, if we can do that part right, I think it does, there's a synergy around how we're doing employment readiness for the youth in our community. And I just don't want that. I just want to put an exclamation point on the work that was done this year to get a authentic training for that age group. I think it's such a sensitive topic that to get something that is really accessible to them, I think is very, very important.
And we also, the board should know, we have very happy attorneys and insurance brokers, because for the first time that we know of in town history, we have contracts with the job sites and they have provided proof of insurance. And these are all things that weren't actually apparently happening before and are now happening now. So we are, we're doing the good work that's needed, so protect everybody. So. Anyway, Michelle, I would like to, we wanted to, I asked Michelle to come to a meeting a while ago, just on a timeline that worked well. I thought it worked really great. I thought it was really great when Scott was able to be here to do a mid-year conversation with the board on what's happening. This timing is, she was already on the schedule to give a mid-year update on strategic project planning, which feeds right into budget season, which feeds right into 2024 work plan. When we got the incredible news that the Curry Road Bridge culvert, it will become a bridge. As I see, well, fingers crossed, all body parts crossed, it becomes a bridge, and therefore we can pass out long-term maintenance to the county. But that the 1.5 million from Bridge New York finally came through. Michelle has put that application through 4 times. So I think they finally just, capitulated and said, we don't want to see the town of Ulysses for this bridge again. So I think it's because she did a very good job continuing to refine the application to meet the needs. So thank you very much for doing that. But that is certainly going to impact your work plan, our work plan, and the town's direction for the next couple of years. So with that, I'll turn your project planning over to you.
So
Sure.
is that Bridge New York then?
Mhm.
So how did you get that through Bridge New York when it's not a bridge?
It's a culvert, there's a culvert program for Bridge New York, and it's
Right, okay,
actually
that's what I was curious.
100% New York State funds versus the bridge program, which is
A
federal funds.
percentage, yeah.
Yeah, so, right, and so the culvert program is 100%. So, but based on the current design estimate, the town still has, it's about $30,000 that it's estimated that the town will have to put in, because it's $1,530,000 is what the estimate is right now. So of course that number will change as we get closer and the design gets more final. So, but we got the max award. So yeah. I was so happy to hear that. I think that's, it's been about a decade since we're like, oh, this is a bridge, that's 100% the town's. We don't have a plan for replacement, and it clearly needs to be replaced.
Culvert.
It definitely needs to get
Yes,
replaced.
yep.
Makes me nervous from
Yeah.
across the every day.
Yeah, so, and it is,
And
it
used
was
to be
one
a
of the,
bridge. It used to be a
correct,
bridge, which is how we
correct.
ended up with it.
yeah. Well, David Orr from Local Road says, if it acts like a duck, it looks like a duck, it's a duck. And that's how he describes if a bridge is a bridge. But obviously it's considered a culvert to New York State. It looks like a bridge though. So,
So is
and-
that on Searsburg and Curry? Is that where it is?
yeah, so if you're heading out towards Searsburg and you take a right on Curry, it's right at that dip,
Oh,
right there. Yeah, it's used heavily by many farms in the area. So having it closed for a season versus you know,
Permanently.
right.
Yeah.
But that was what I consider to be one of the town's largest sleeping giants as far as our financial responsibility and infrastructure maintenance goes. So, yeah, that was excellent news. And it really, you know, like Caitlin was saying, it has a huge impact on the 2024 work plan. And as you can see, based on other, you know, here I am with my job description is the work plan that we put forward, right? I'm the budget officer and also catch-all in many ways. But essentially project manager in so many ways. So although I might not be the lead on everything listed here, I've got a lot going on with the activities associated with each of these. So I think 2023, and that's up there, yes, cool. So let's see. Just to back up a little bit, this is a great time to be having this discussion because as Caitlin mentioned, really work plans are what feed into our budget, although that's sort of a new practice. We often built the budget and then started discussing work plans. So we're organization-wide during this budget season, we have departments making work plans that are informing the budget versus the other way around. So, this is split up between this current year, next year, and then the future. Active versus planning. Active is in reference to things that we deal, you know, there's a work activity on a daily basis associated with the projects listed in the active section. And then the planning section is, you know, it's mostly, we're just talking about it right now. And we know that it's something that's in the near horizon, but there might not be routine activities associated with it, except for maybe some upstream conversations around planning around those things. So I'm not sure what makes sense. Probably not a line by line description of each of these because we unless that's expected, I'm not sure yet. But I think some highlights for this year include, you know, the IT modernization project is taking much more time than we all anticipated. But we're, you know, the light is at the end of the tunnel and we're getting through it. But this was a monumental project that was a long time coming. And so that will trickle into 2024. You know, we have these 2 DEC grants that the communication is directed. They are controlling the speed of which we're working with them as far as the grant administration side of things. And there are some project implementation what's the word? Project implementation, you know.
Aspect?
No, it affects the speed of their speed of grant administration affects our speed of project implementation. So, so we're doing our best with that.
Michelle's being incredibly diplomatic. They are slowing us down by a lot.
Yeah.
They're just like, there, yeah.
And it's, yeah. But we're thankful for the funding and it's just good to know. I think, you know, we got started on the DEC comp plan update first because it was awarded first. And I think the learning curve that we're on with that is going to just help inform the planning grant that we got for. So it's called the non-point source. It's an engineering report and we'll come out with 5 or 6 culverts with a preliminary design concept to remediate routine flooding issues at these culverts. And then the Black Diamond Trail, the scoping phase of this, we're working our way through that now, as everybody knows. Camp Barton is, Caitlin has the majority of that, along with the recreational field land acquisition. We're going to be talking about the town hall painting project at this meeting. And something that I'll say about the town hall facilities management in general is that we have some catch up to do. And we're finding that procurement of consultants or vendors rather for this kind of work is actually very tricky. I think if it was 5 years ago when we were doing this work, it might be a different story, but I think the pandemic really turned a lot of this type of industry on its end, and it's hard to find anybody to do this kind of work. We're also finding some constraints around we live in a very rural place, and there's some constraints around the types of business that we can do business with based on items like or requirements like prevailing wage. We can talk about that when we get to the painting as an applied example, but I'm going to be working with our attorney in the coming weeks to discuss our boilerplate language for our contracts, which will inform our RFP. We essentially are needing to find an elegant and graceful way to make it easier to do business with the town. Because it's hard. It's if you're a small business, working with a town can be tricky based on our insurance requirements and prevailing wage requirements and all those things. So 2024 is going to be a busy year. We've got these 3 major grant projects that we're going to be working on, and there will be varying degrees of how time consuming they will be. I heard at a webinar a couple months ago that there are some municipalities who have grant administrators. They have an office, a grant office. And at those municipalities, of course, these are larger municipalities with 4, 5, 10 times the number of people that we have in the town of Ulysses. But for these municipal grant administrators, they deal with they're full-time, and they deal with about 5 to 7 grants at a time. So I work 32 hours, and we've got 3 major grants next year. So, and we'll be, lining up in the future. So, so that's just some perspective about where my time is going. So the future list here, I have some particular interest in things that are a little bit further out around planning, and it's hard not to get the cart before the horse around this, but
Are we on the wish list now?
yeah, we're down to the wish list. This is a mix, and this is the first draft of this report, which I think Caitlin and I have spoken about doing like an active grant dashboard type thing to provide once a month to the board. So I'm thinking that we'll take this document and turn it into something that gets updated, which means I'll further refine the way that it's laid out, including on the future wish list, categorizing this a little bit more planning versus infrastructure related projects. So it really is a mix of planning and infrastructure in many ways. So yeah.
And more things will hit the future wish list as we work our way through the comp plan.
Mhm.
So that's
Right.
going to inform a further refinement of what starts moving, gets added to that list and starts moving into more of a planning or active category. So that's great. Questions or thoughts?
It would be helpful if you could put like an estimated time on here, like either in percentage or, because if you are 32 hours, to see if you're spreading yourself thin.
You mean like how many hours?
How would you spread yourself between all this?
Mm.
And this is an extensive list. Say IT modernization.
I don't know,
project.
that
I
might
mean,
be kind of hard to do though.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Well, and these are also townwide. So Michelle does touch at parts of these, but not everything. This isn't just her work plan. This is really the town's work plan. So hers would be a separate, like I wouldn't say you're spending a lot of time working on Camp Art. I mentioned.
right, so this should be a column that says, KO next to it or something, recreational field.
Yeah, like
maybe
point
that's
person.
KO. Right,
Point of contact, point person, just.
right. But this is
so-
her presentation, so therefore it's kind of her list, right?
Yeah,
she's-
point person makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how do we know if we're asking her to do, 50 hours for the work on 32 hours? We have no idea if there's a problem here.
Well, I was going by the that reference point of a full-time grant administrator working on, depending on the nature of the grant. And, you know, it's not like every grant will take a set amount of time. There's a varying degree. For instance, the Bridge New York will not take me nearly as much time as the last time because I've already learned a huge chunk of that process. That's the trickiest part, is learning how to administer a brand new grant program. So that one, I think there'll be some time savings there, but learning that these full-time grant administrators are working on about 5 to 7 grants. That to me was a good indicator of what we should be doing, how we should be planning. So, but yeah, no, noted, because you know, we don't want to be in a position where we don't have the staff to. The last thing you want to do is turn down an award grant because you don't have the capacity. So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got budget season coming up. So is this too much?
no.
Well, I mean, no, how do we know that?
Oh,
Right, I don't want to find out after we've done the budget, you know, that the budget is set. And now we have this wish list, and okay, what do we have, which can do we have to kick down the road?
Yeah,
Right,
you're
so
right,
if
right.
there's an idea, I don't, you know, if Camp Barton is all Caitlin's right now, then okay, does she have the bandwidth to do that, right? We've already chosen to do Camp Barton, so it's not like we're gonna back out now, you know, and which one of these are potentially optional, right?
Right, yeah.
That don't matter that we do later.
right.
You know, if, you know, let's say Curry Road, you know, there's this, you know, this might be nothing for the next 2 or 3 months, but all of a sudden it might take up, you know, half your time, you know,
Mhm,
for, you know, a small stretch.
mhm.
So that's all I'm saying, is it would help us as we're looking forward.
Well, I think it's the finance committee has been, and I'm Mary, I'm sure you can elaborate much more eloquently than I can, but I understand that the finance committee wants to, and Rich has been pushing the idea of, before we apply for more grants or take on new projects, that there's an assessment whether on capacity as part of a review. Because I think that is, we've grown, just in my time in the town, I've seen us stretch and we're growing and we're doing some great things, but there's more demand. That I've come to the board and said, you know, or I've said to individually, I haven't come to the board directly. You know, we're growing, there's more demand for recreation and we have space to do it. So how do we step up? Do we decide that we're not going to do it, or do we stretch? And how do we
step up,
stretch?
right?
Yeah, and what does that look like? And so I'm going to be coming to the board in budget season with a proposal of how we can fill that demand and pay for it.
Right.
That's just one avenue. And so I think we're in an incredible opportunity of potential growth, but doing it in a
Yeah.
managed, calculated way, and not saying, oh, we can do that project and that project and that project and project, and then we'll just figure out how to do it all, because that's not, to your point, is not the right way to do it.
And I don't want to burn anybody out.
Absolutely, no,
Right.
no, and I think that becomes that if we want to do more grants beyond, I think what we have currently had, and that what we're going to be strategically moving towards is we will wrap up a comprehensive plan process, so we want to be able to turn to zoning in a reasonable timeline from that, you know, making that appropriate transition and management, as well as the other projects that are evolved out there. So you're right in line, Michael, with my thinking on not wanting to stretch beyond we need to stretch appropriately.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And this is a simplified version of what actually Niels, Caitlin, and I meet on a monthly basis. And this is a simplified version of how we talk about these projects. We actually have them listed out, and you know, here's the active period for this one, here's the active period for this one. So maybe I could
think that'd be
do a
useful.
simplified, you know, because it's
Yeah.
too much, but I can add something like that to this.
Yeah.
So that you can see how things are lining up, because
Yeah.
we can, I mean, DEC grants aside, we do pretty much can calculate when things are gonna happen, when the workloads are gonna really distribute themselves. So, but you know, with that said, these funding organizations create their own timeline that they don't consider ours, so it can be tricky for sure.
Well, I think once those contracts are executed, right, and those are finalized, then that timeline, hopefully, the DEC
Yeah, right.
we can have a clearer picture.
Yep.
Someday we'll have that non-point source contract, right? Someday, one of these days.
So it's really the CSC one that we.
Well, I thought that the reason I wanted Michelle to come in and talk is that, so as we're heading into budget season, we're already thinking about, because we talk about things in bits and pieces. And so this was kind of a way just to round up a lot of what's going on, so we can think about these and think about where we want to start prioritizing and where, some things, I really, while I deeply love historic preservation, I don't know if the Jacksonville Hamlet Economic Development Historic District is going to rise to, a top priority for next year. That being said, there are other things on this plate that as we go through the comp plan process might start percolating up. So this is not a static list. So if you're not seeing things on here that you think we should start talking about, please let us know, and we can continue to move in that direction where we start thinking about that. So
I think the comp plan, and as we start getting into the public outreach, is really gonna play into some of these future wish lists. Like, there's 3 of them that I know that the planning committee have already talked about: the ag plan update, the open space, the climate action plan, and the emergency preparation plan were all items we talked about the other day, actually. And there could be more that will come up in public forums and so forth. Is this the first time you guys have done like a list like this?
In this format, this is all being fed into from multi-year planning that has already happened or been in conversation. So with different departments, with highway department, the town board. So this is just a different, I would say, a consolidated version of potential projects from that multi-year capital planning. So, and grants, that's really what I would say are feeding into. Do you think it's an accurate?
Yeah, but I would say that this planning for planning is a couple years old for the town. I would say that we are looking at, we have the capacity to be doing this more so than ever.
I mean, I think this is very helpful for me, just still kind of treading into this all.
Right.
Seeing all this in one list is very helpful. So I like it. And if there are some more information like what Michael was asking for with just some points, we obviously don't want to burn you out. You're an asset here, so
Yeah, I can,
want to make sure.
like I said, we can do the point person column and then the timeline, work demand, load. That's anticipated.
Yeah, it's just
Not
something-
adding
something-
anything more to
right,
your
something
plate.
you already
Right.
have,
You already
if
got
you
it.
could just quickly add it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want that to turn into a project
Exactly.
into itself,
Right.
right?
Yeah, right. I'll just add this
Yeah.
to the project.
So we're gonna put Carissa's name to the IT modernization project, right? It's already taking a bunch of her time. I joke about that.
So if anybody would like to come see my whiteboard in my office at some point, I think it might either make you feel better or worse about the level of detail that's tracked in our office. So, but I'm not intimidated by, obviously a new grant program is tricky and it's a lot of organization and detail and communication, but I think I'm well suited for the level of detail that's required for this sort of thing. So,
Might need a second whiteboard.
right, we need to work. So if you see a whiteboard come up in the vouchers, another one.
You know, it's cool.
Yeah.
No specific line category. It doesn't get its own category. in
Right,
the
right.
budget. Excellent. Anything else you want to discuss on this tonight, or any other questions for Michelle?
Just bring it with you when we do the budget.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, this will definitely be part of
The
the,
retreat.
if you don't think I already got the agenda items on a draft for that retreat.
A
We
month
could have
away.
done, we could have done some fun hazing and talked to Liz into believing that it really was going to be an overnight.
Well, I knew it wasn't an overnight, but I didn't know if it was like an all day thing.
Bring your sleeping
Didn't know how long to black out for work. What I have to do with the kids. I got a plan.
I understand. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Michelle.
We can all camp
I'll
in apartments.
pop back up here when we're
You
talking
can
about.
sandbag
the
the UV,
paintings.
right?
Sounds good. Well, actually, why don't you just stay because
Okay.
we're gonna do the cyber update too.
Sure.
It makes sense for you to be here for that.
Okay.
So very quickly under old business, Department of Public Works transition update, my conspirator, which is, and I do mean that in a positive way. Rich is the other union liaison. So we're gonna get a union meeting together when he's back in the country. He is currently doing what apparently the #1 destination for Americans this summer who are traveling is Europe, and he is Europe bound. So when he gets back, we're going to start talking to the union about altering the contract to reflect the potential direction of the DPW as opposed to just a highway department. So that's really all that the update I have for that, other than the intention is most likely to bring this back for a draft law for the meeting at the end of July on the 25th, I believe that is. And then we can go ahead and schedule, if we're comfortable, we can go ahead and schedule a public hearing. The law would not, if we proceed forward in the direction that we've touched on briefly before, it wouldn't take effect until January. So we have some time to do that. So if the board ends up deciding to wait until September, that's fine too. We're not under significant time pressure from that, but we can want to make sure we have plenty of time for conversation. Does anybody have any questions about anything DPW potential related?
Is that for the whole department or is that a subset?
It'd be for the whole department.
Okay.
Yeah. That would really just bring water
Yep.
appropriately into
And
instead of
mowing
the
and-
weird hodgepodge thing that I'm, used to be supposed to be in charge of. Doesn't make any sense. Okay, great. We'll keep an eye out for more information about that, and we can look at potentially scheduling that public hearing at our next meeting. And then to one of those active items, the IT modernization plan, the work that the board embraced based on the good work of the IT cyber committee, that work plan's being executed. So in this last several weeks, the town has moved over to our new server. We have that's now being backed up by Advanced 2000's facility. And our small things such as our Wi-Fi speed was being unnecessarily constricted is now functioning at the level it's supposed to, which for the first time, and there was a Zoom meeting that we had last week, and it was a hodgepodge of people, both on staff in person and on their computers in Zoom, and remotely all zooming in, and we didn't have any glitches or interruptions. And that is truly and there were probably like 5 or 6 different computers at town hall zooming simultaneously, which doesn't sound that impressive, but it has always been a problem. And so small things like that is nice to be moving in that direction. But the transition onto new servers has been a tremendous amount of work, and I'd like to extend my appreciation in particular to Carissa and Michelle for helping work through the process of translating IT speak to figuring out what it means for them, and then being able to tell staff what the implications are. It doesn't, like, for the staff, at the end of the day, it's not supposed to feel any different than what it was previously, but so much has gone into that process of moving under new usernames, copying all the files, moving the software onto the servers, and that process continues to be ongoing. Michelle, this is just the first phase that we're working under right now. What else about that process would you like to elaborate on?
Well, we're gonna give the staff a breather before any more changes get unrolled. You know how new things can be added to your, dropping new things to people when they already have a workload. You just want to be sensitive to the fatigue around learning new things. So we're now in this place where we are more secure than we ever have been before. If we tried to get a cybersecurity insurance policy now, I think it might be a little bit easier because we can answer the application in a much more affirmative way, knowing that we are more secure. So that cannot be understated, the amount of work that it took to get to that point. The next thing that we have to do is, and this is based on the recommendation from the comptroller's audit, is we're now in a position of needing to update all of the software in our computers to the Microsoft Office, the whole suite. This is the direction that we've been heading for a long time. It's actually in this year's budget to do that. This will also resolve the issue that we've been experiencing with the new domain, which, as a reminder, was sort of the lead of all of this work, was that we had heard that the website, our old website, the domain that it was hosted on, was going to essentially become irrelevant,
Yeah.
obsolete. And although we never really dug into what that meant, we knew that we needed to maintain our website. So we advanced that piece of this project ahead of everything else without being truly ready to do it, but we were on a timeline and we had to do it. So we moved to the .gov, which is the standard that we have to be held to at this point. That's, I don't know who the powers that be want all governments to be on the .gov. That has made things tricky with our email, as everybody knows. Moving to Microsoft will resolve, as we've been told, will resolve this email delivery issue to our new domain. So that will be unrolled in the next couple months. But like I just said, this will be a shift for staff, and we want to be sensitive about how all these changes are going to affect everyone's workload. So after we move to Microsoft 365 fully, including online accounts for town board members, I'm pretty sure that that's how that's going to work. Is that you'll have access to Outlook online, so that everybody will have a uniform landing zone for, you don't have this Gmail account over here or whatever. So so after we do that, we're going to be upgrading our phone system. Hopefully by the end of the year is our hope. We always have to be careful to not butt into heavy workload seasons like tax season, for instance. But these phones the phones that we have here are highly outdated, and so we're going to be transitioning to the latest thing that works the best. So the functionality around the phone system will be increasing as well. So
I was wondering why we pay separately for long distance. No, I mean, who
yeah.
does that?
Yeah, that won't be that will no longer be a thing, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll be able to get rid of a lot of we're gonna be able to scale down to what it was like 6 different, if I remember the last list, it was something like 6, we've been paying for like a squillion and
Different lines.
Different lines, and because we'll be able to go down and still have the functionality of call waiting and being able to direct people to your voicemail or to other lines as needed. So in the staff I have been incredibly impressed with the flexibility of the staff, because we have a staff, it's not like our staff all work from 8 to 5 every day. And right, that they're in the office and that's how it is. The majority of our staff are working some degree of part-time, partially remote schedules. And so this work has required them to be bringing their computers in on particular schedules. Michelle was here on Juneteenth because that's a good time. A holiday is a good time to get updates done. But that meant she was opening up the doors so that the company could be in here getting some of those things taken care of. Staff are bringing their computers in and out and transitioning, and then of course then bugs. You discover that Zoom doesn't work, or that a piece of software isn't quite working the way it's supposed to, and so then you're on the phone. And issues are getting resolved, and I think it's coming along effectively. But that's every single computer because we don't have, it'd be so much easier for staff if we had like a dedicated IT person on staff. We don't. So we're all to some degree, and Chris in particular, have been serving as our IT translators to help the process. Carissa has the most software needs. Is there anything about that you want to say, or anything about your experience overall or the process that you can say in a public session without a martini?
It's been a little bumpy, but we're figuring it out.
Is Burns still doing the desktop support?
Nope. right now, he's still backing up what we're calling the old server. And the old server, part of what we needed to do with the comptroller, per the comptroller and per what New York State court system requires is the courts needs to be separate. And this is accomplishing that. So the court is actually only being served by the old server. They're not going to be served by the new server. And so we're going to probably be coming to the town board at some point for effectively a decommissioning of that equipment to turn over to the court. But we're meeting with the company tomorrow to actually talk about that in detail, and then having a meeting set up with the court about what they're going to need to do, because the way the system got set up originally, whenever the server was first put in place, I think the perception of and needs of the state court system have changed. And what they really want to do is they don't want our company touching any of their computers, understandably. And they want to be in charge of their own IT infrastructure and everything. And so it makes sense at this point, basically, to turn over the server that they still exist on. And then they can use, it doesn't have functional value. It's not like we could go out and sell it and not turn a profit, but make any real money on it. And so then they're going to have to stand up their own IT support and oversight. So that's the direction we're heading in.
Are you talking about the state court system or?
Or our two judges.
Our two judges.
Well, they're all under the
That's
state
all.
court system, so they have to abide by what's the official name for the court that I'm not, it's not the state court system, it's something more official than that.
That's something,
I'm sorry to put you on the spot, you know what I'm,
yeah, now I can't,
it's like Office of Court Management or
yeah,
something.
Oh,
no, I can't.
So every time they have,
Justice Court
yes, the
Administration?
Justice Court Administration, they're running a separate line. Basically, the idea is the court could actually live separately from town hall. Like it could live somewhere in the town and be separate from this building, separate from our administration. And that's the direction we need to move in, because we're not allowed, we shouldn't have access to their documents, to their materials. And so the direction that we've been moving in is basically having a server walls between us. So we're gonna have the everything else in the town on this, and then
Do we need to provide that for them?
that's what we don't know yet. So right now they're essentially in a holding pattern. I mean, they get support for their software and things like that from the Justice Court. What they were seeing when Jeff was contracting for us, on a more consistent basis than he is now, he was really more resetting the server that they were on, as opposed to actively going in and messing around with their computers the way he would with mine or Michelle's. And so this is really formalizing a process that the Justice Court requires. And so we just we had this kind of organic server relationship that we need to step away from, because that's not what the Justice Court wants, and that's not what's in the best interest of the town for that reason. For instance, Advanced 2000 is not allowed to touch their computer, so they can't move on to the new server.
Would they send somebody from the JCA to
That is what
set them up, or?
I believe they have had people from JCA work on their computers directly, yes. So, but the servers themselves, to the best of my knowledge, they haven't, at least not in my time in the town. But their servers continue to be updated by Jeff. And so he's been very gracious to help with the transition on that. And so they're not going to be abandoned. We're going to meet with them and begin the transition process to see what JCA is going to require for them. So basically, we moved away from them as opposed to pushing them off, if that makes any sense. We moved our stuff off to a new
So
direction.
is our desktop support through Advanced 2000?
It will be as of probably the end of this week. And that's where we haven't started under that plan yet, because we were still in the transition. And that's one of the questions to our meeting on Thursday is when do we start putting in tickets, essentially. But right now, if someone has a problem, if I have a problem with my town computer, I have a phone number to call directly to them, to the individual who's been updating us remotely. And then it's been a hybrid system of some of the things are done remotely because they have access. And then others are, we've had last week, we had an employee on site who was working with someone remotely to actually do the configurations necessary in each individual computer. But yeah, we have someone to call.
So where's our data now?
We have a server on site, and then we have a server backed up at their facility. They have a data facility, storage facility physically in Western New York. So that's where it lives.
So
So
where's the server here?
back near where the old one was,
Okay,
same location, yeah. No longer in somebody's closet though, the secondary, one.
like locked up.
Yes. Anything else worth reporting or any other questions?
So low risk of having our tax record stolen, or
I would say that's a software.
Tax
question.
records are online.
well, no, I mean,
Yes.
you know, ransomware, whatever.
Lower risk than 6 months ago.
And we're gonna do, part of the plan is to do more staff training on that also, you know, not opening things.
As I recall, they do phishing, random phishing events. Yeah.
Phishing and schmishing, I just learned is the new term. I don't know what it is, but somebody, all right,
SMS
yeah,
through text.
Oh.
You get a text that says, oh, you just won.
Yeah.
$50,000. Click here.
Well,
don't click.
one of the things that, one of the risks to the town has always been, and it's to any facility, is that if you're asking for like payroll to be transitioned, if you get an email saying, hey, you know, I'd like my payroll to move to this bank instead. And one general policy to make sure that doesn't ever happen here is that any changes like that have to be made in person. So that's kind of a really low tech approach that we use in town hall, that you just can't ask for
Right.
your paycheck to be moved to a new bank, like,
Mhm.
or similar type situations.
Yeah.
So anti-technology is sometimes the solution that we're happy to embrace.
Good.
So, but to Michelle's point, I think that when we review the application for cyber insurance, it's going to be a much more affirmative of the things we're taking care of that we weren't able to be affirmative about before. So that'll be a good point of comparison.
Mhm.
Hopefully that shows up in the price point of cyber insurance.
You'll see.
Excellent. Then moving on to the rural youth services contract update. And I'm hoping Liz will pop in any additional comments too about the process. Just to give the board a little bit of perspective, we have had a long relationship going back about 30 years with a contract with Rural Youth Services to provide youth development services within the town. And last year in October, Ethan, who'd been with us for 7 years, gave a notice. The way this works is that Rural Youth Services is part of Cornell Cooperative, and they hire a program manager on our behalf, and then we have a contract relationship with them. The money is, there's a matching component, a local component, and a county component. So we receive county funding, and then we match it with a combination of town and village money to pay for that position. Ethan resigned to take another job. 7 years is obviously a long time to spend with us. And they went out looking for a replacement. And it was a hard hiring market, as you probably all remember. And in December, January, going into February, there was one applicant for a while, then there was a second applicant, but it was generally felt by the Youth Commission that this was not a robust response to a job pool, and that we thought there might be some structural reasons for that, looking at the pay rate and the job duties and things like that. The youth commission is made up of representatives from the town, the village, and the school. And we thought that because we were between staff members, now was the time to look at that contract with rural youth services to see if it continued to be appropriate. It was a contract that had effectively, to the best of my knowledge, we had been hitting repeat on for quite a number of years, and that had not been actively looked at in I don't know how long it had been, but it had been many years. And so we decided that this seemed like the job search was essentially failing. And that this would be a good time to start looking at that contract. And we started going into conversations and negotiations with rural youth services and with the county. And I think what's resulted is it's been a slow process. But we're in a couple of weeks ago, we had another sit down with all the powers that be between the three groups to talk about what we were looking at and some of the concerns that the town had. We wanted to beef up based on both legal advice and insurance advice. We wanted to beef up the insurance requirements specified in there, the responsibility specified in there. It was a fairly light contract, was their interpretation, legal interpretation, my interpretation as well. Basically, we thought it was a good opportunity to refine the contract. And in that process, we have been tremendously supported by the county. They've been very supportive of wanting to turn it into a better contract, to the point that the county is suggesting, even the youth services division is suggesting that this could become the new template or pilot contract for all of the municipalities who participate in this program, that this could be the 2.0 version of a program that's been kind of going along and doing good work for a number of years, but that it's time to bring it again, like we're doing with the IT, bring it into the 21st century in an even more substantive way. So I've been, Liz, and the reason I'm saying this is because it's July and we don't have a contract. And the reason, and we're not going to have a contract in the immediate future. It's under legal review right now. We got a revised contract from them late Friday, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I sent it off to Nate, and he's going to be going through and doing some redlining and tweaking of the language before it comes back to the board, before it goes by. First, it's go to the youth commission and RYS, and before it comes back to the board, because the contract is with the town. But we've stipulated that the youth commission is the lead, takes a lead role in the advising on that. And so we're taking this as an opportunity to really get a good contract out of it and not rush through it. But what it does mean is we're going to be in the position of having a lot of money to spend that we'll need to spend in youth development this fall. And so I'll be coming to you with some plans about that after I work it out with the county. They want us to spend down their money. They're supportive of us finding services in our community that we can funnel that money through. They don't want to hand back any money. And it's to the tune of about $29,000. So that's forthcoming on my plate. But it's a good problem to have, and we have really good county partners. But Liz, what about the process? Am I missing or forgetting?
Well, I think you've covered what's been going on for the last 7 months pretty well. I agree the county has been stepping up, and the group that we're working with has been very helpful in facilitating negotiations and discussions with the groups. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the meeting that they had 2 weeks ago with the county, CCE, and then the youth commission members that were there. But I heard great feedback about it, that everybody was open and honest about discussions and what points we can change. I haven't opened the new contract yet because we did get it on Friday, but I will. I think this is a very important programming for our kids. We didn't have it last year because Ethan left in October. So as of October, a lot of the kids, and these are like tweens and teens, high school kids who are looking for programs and activities that are not necessarily recreational related. So these are programs with the library, either And I know the library has been doing a great job stepping up too and offering programs for them to have a place to go to after school. But this will be something that we want to really further develop in conjunction with students. So I think I'd be interested and looking forward to seeing what the suggestions are to continuing and getting some programs developed in September, getting some feedback from the youth are, because I know there's several of the kids were missing the programs last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we have money to spend from the county, I think we can find some good ways to use it that benefit our youth.
And one of them will be being able to step up now that Rachel really has created the framework. And what I didn't tell you is that we didn't get anything from ROAS on that framework or of the youth employment program. Their files, we asked for their files, they apparently got corrupted, so they literally had nothing to turn over. And so that was Rachel, she created the whole framework from having conversations. It's not that there was no institutional knowledge, but there was no, it's not like she was handed a bunch of forms and it was like, okay, here's your work plan. She really, she did it from scratch with a lot of good conversation. It was great to have a person on staff, quite honestly, to talk about what it was like, and working with Paul Panic at the school, that he was really helpful too, I know. So she had support, but now that she's created it, now it's a program that we could do in the fall, which is something that actually Ethan through Rural Youth Services was periodically doing. He would save some money and sometimes have job kids placed in the fall, but that's one place. It's not programming the same way that you're talking about, but it will be a component of that and being able to use those funds.
I don't think we never wanted to not work with CCE.
Right.
The intent had always been to work with CCE, but like Caitlin said, like there were just some items in the contract that we just needed more transparency on, and more transparency and accountability just seemed to be lacking. So I think we're taking the right steps in order. It was the appropriate time to make this update on this contract, and it might be a couple more months to fine tune it and get it through legal review and sign it, but I think it was time well spent over this past 6 months, 7 months since we've been doing this.
Well, and I anticipate that we're going to see other towns be like, hey, can I see a copy of that? Because I've talked to the other town supervisors, like, what's happening in your program? Like, I don't really know. And I'm like, okay, well, here's what's going on with us, and how can we really work collaboratively to get the best programming that we're paying for into the lives of the children and youth in our community. So yeah, I'm feeling very optimistic, but there have been some sloggy days.
So when would somebody be online?
Well,
Well,
I mean, what is the timeline for all that?
well, so I know that you are kind of familiar with Cornell and its interesting process and slow process. So one of the things is that the job description, as was originally proposed, not as proposed, but as continuing, that was previously put out for employment, that job description can no longer be the one used, because we're taking out the.
The Cornell job description?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
week, right? No, not a week. That because we're pulling out the rural youth services, we're pulling out the youth employment program from that job description. It's going to change what that job description is. And so that job description is, once we come to, and we're all working in the same direction. Nobody's working at cross purposes between the organizations, the county and the town. But as we fine tune that, and we get to some much clearer agreed upon language, they're going to be reworking the contract, reworking the job description. That job description, once that contract is finalized, then has to go through all of Cornell's layers of review. And then only after it gets through that layers of review can they actually post for the job. I would not anticipate that we have anybody in place until
So it's probably
2024.
CC Roberts that's going to be doing that.
I don't know the exact personnel. They were just laying it out, and they, to my mind, we're looking at 2024. That's just realistically, I think, where we are before programming.
But we're getting $29,000 this year, that's just fiscal year.
Yeah, because it was allocated for us. And it was allocated, the original contract, which has not been signed because they have not provided to us to sign because we were out of contract with RYS. It's for that the bulk of that money, with the exception of about less than $4,000, was allocated towards the RYS contract. The county is saying, it's fine that you're not using RYS this year. We understand why and we support you in going through these contract negotiations. But we still have this money and we really want you to spend it, because they don't want to give it back to the county and then have to fight for more money. They want this money to be actively invested in their townships. And so they're standing up a partnership with us to help us spend that money. So they're not saying, County of Ulysses, you're on your own, let us know how it goes. They're working.
Rachel's gonna manage that for us.
We don't know what I mean, she's gonna manage the RYS, or so many acronyms, the Youth Employment Program component of it. How much time she has remaining in the time we have for her, and her, desire to work however many hours. Right now we have her approved up to 19. And that seems to be working well. In her life, is my understanding. How much time she has for working on this is going to kind of be determined. It might be me asking for another project assistant potentially. I'm hoping to use Rachel as much as possible, because I don't see some of this programming being permanent programming for the town. And I also see us not actually leading the programming necessarily, but going into, there's, talking to the library about augmenting programming they're already doing, talking to the conservatory about augmenting programming they're already doing and opening it up. So that's how I see it, more as I'm not going to be, Michelle is not going to go lead an art class.
Right.
Whether or not you wanted to or not, I'm not going to be asking you to, we're not going to be running all the programming directly. I'm looking at contracts
Right.
to execute services
Augment
of the
this,
short
yeah.
term.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's
Makes
what,
Interesting.
but yeah.
Yeah.
But we're gonna find creative ways to spend the money, because I hate turning down money. So we don't want to send it back, and the county supports us doing that. And they also have access to other programs and other organizations in Tompkins County that we haven't worked with before. So connecting with those resources is how we're gonna mostly.
The county group has been great.
They have. Excuse me, I've got a tickle in the back of my throat. So long story short, you'll eventually be seeing a contract draft after we get a haul a little bit closer to it, but right now it's sitting. I send it to legal on Monday. And so Nate will probably be back with me next week with more of his thoughts on that. So, any other comments, questions?
Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And then that brings us on to new business, the painting contract authorization. I know that Michael, you wanted to talk about this, and Michelle, before we, I know you have some very good questions. Can you explain to us how we, just give us a little background about how we got to where we are with the quote here?
Sure. Yeah, this was a great process that we went through to obtain this quote. So as everybody recalls, we went through the process of trying to find what we wanted, essentially a facilities consultant. We're still working on that model, and knowing that we have a DPW considerations coming up. We're still working on how exactly this facilities management is going to roll out. The way that this worked was that Michael Defoe, who is now a volunteer, the contract that we had approved, we will end up terminating, and he's working solely as a volunteer for the town. And the model that we used, it was a little bit of a pilot model that we used for this quote process, was that he obtained and worked directly with the folks providing the quotes, and then communicated through me. It worked well, and we unraveled some really interesting things that, because we have never worked with a facilities professional in this way, the industry standards around this sort of thing are unknown to us. So it was good to have somebody who knew what we can expect out of this sort of thing. So what happened was he solicited estimates from well, he reached out to a variety of places and ended up meeting with, I think, 3 different. Yeah, it ended up being, well, let me back up. Last year, we got a quote for the town hall, to paint the town hall. And so that's one quote. There's one quote there. So Michael met with folks and got estimates, did a walk around here at the town hall. But then when they saw the details of what it means to do business with the town, including the insurance requirements and prevailing wage, we have to adhere to some pretty staunch regulations that some folks who were providing estimates ended up saying, never mind, we can't, for one reason or the other, it's just too difficult to work with the town. So we ended up with a single quote, and we used that quote, we compared to the one that we got last year, and the folks who gave us the quote last year actually aren't booking for this year. They're booking out for 2024 already, so they're not available for this year. So the quote that we did receive came with glowing recommendations from Cuba Heights. They did some work with them during the pandemic and they said, without me prompting, they said they couldn't say a bad thing about this company. And they also,
Is that the village?
the village of Cuba Heights, yeah. They also have extensive experience with prevailing wage, which ends up being like one of those major make it or break it, who we can work with type of things. Prevailing wage is through the Department of Labor, and anybody who lays hands on the town hall has to prove that they, and I'm simplifying this process, has to prove that they meet prevailing wage requirements. So the paperwork associated that and the interactions with the Department of Labor, that's, like I said, it's one of those litmus tests around, can you work with the town or not? If you're a whiz with prevailing wage, it's a really good indicator of how you function. So that's how we got to this point of providing one quote. We did run this through the finance committee. The details on the estimate itself, if there's any concerns with that, we can work that out in the contracting process side of things, because we still have the contract to create. But this is the procurement chart checklist. So, and in our procurement policy, it does say that a good faith effort needs to be made to obtain the number of required quotes, but in no event shall the failure to obtain the number of proposals be a bar to the procurement. So we have a documented effort of trying to solicit quotes. The thing that was so illuminating about this process, that because we didn't have somebody with this extensive facilities experience running this process before, was that yes, folks are interested in bidding on jobs, but once they see the details of the walk back from once folks really saw the details of working with the town was illuminating. And like I said, I'm going to be meeting with Nate to try to figure out how the town can be more friendly to doing business with local groups.
While still affirming and fulfilling our legal responsibilities.
Right, right. So
How did this painting contract from Ernst compare to the one from last year?
it was a little bit higher. Yeah. But if we went back, I mean, lots happened in the past year. So if we went back and got the same quote, I'm sure it would be very comparable because of inflation. It's such a huge deal.
It's also would be for next year also.
Right.
This one is for this year.
Right. So there was, I think the board was in the loop of when the kerfuffle of trying to get a vendor to install an ADA compliant door. There was a false start with that a couple years ago. And that was another lesson that we learned about just how hard it is to find available contractors to do the work at the level that we would need people to be doing the work on at this public facility. You know, we need sterling vendors to be working with, people who really know work at the level that we are required to work at. So it's tricky. And we will be, turning back to the concept of how to best manage these facilities. But we need to let the DPW conversation play out before we make any major moves on that. So, Caitlin, I mean, as far as like what our long-term plan for facilities management, which I think is sort of like the elephant in the room around the fact that, it's been really difficult to find people to work on the town hall. We haven't had a general contractor. We haven't had a contract with a general contractor for, the handyman work stuff the handy person stuff that we need done on a regular basis here. It's a tricky thing.
And having a DPW on January 1st doesn't mean that we have on staff the people necessary to do it, but it does mean that as we continue, as that department, theoretical department continues to grow, they can actually look for employees who have maintenance and facility skills. And they've not been able to look for anybody specifically with them because that was on the purview of the highway department. But that's ultimately the direction we're hoping to grow into. Even if it's someone who only does it lightly, right? A couple hours a week, spread over 52 weeks. So, okay, so let's talk the quote itself and thoughts on that. Michael, I know you have stuff you wanted to say, so I wanted to give you.
Yeah, so anyway, the quote doesn't say anything about prevailing wage is one item. And then their terms at 50% due on start. I think he or she or whoever has a lot of money up front and would leave the town exposed if they decided not to finish it. And so some of those terms I would either do 25-75 or 25-25-50, but it's a relatively small job. And I think it all depends on the timing of when they would do it. If they finished it, right after one of our cycles, it would be another 30 days anyway, by the time they would get paid. So, I don't know if they understand how
Right.
the payment cycle of a municipality
Right.
works.
So the first thing about the prevailing wage, that will be handled in the contract. So that'll be included in the contract. And can you just repeat so I'll ask what an industry standard is for this, because I agree that my guess is that's what they do for commercial residential, not government. So what would you be comfortable with as far as the?
Either a 25-75 or a 25-25-50, but again, it's a small job.
Right.
I would think they would,
Be
with good,
done with time.
yeah, exactly.
I
I would see
From
it
everything
being
I've
done in like
heard-
1 or 2 checks, really, right?
From
Yeah.
what I've heard about this company, I'm guessing they're gonna be totally willing to do what we.
Who you should ask Cuba Heights.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
theirs was structured.
How they did it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Have they given an
Jeff
indication?
Walker is an absolute delight.
Oh, wonderful.
The clerk at Cuba Heights.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, I'll call him tomorrow and ask him.
Have they given an indication of when they can do the work if it was approved and how long it will take?
Yes, so it's 5 to 7 days. And because there's scaffolding, the only paint happens high up. The only paint, well, besides the trim on the ground level, but it's gonna be time consuming because of the scaffolding situation.
And they have their insurance and all that.
Yep,
And that's something town hall can stay open for, or?
yes.
So just be careful with doors under scaffolds or whatever.
Yeah,
Whatever they do.
there'll be one entrance available at all
Okay.
times. sort of thing. Sorry, what was the,
When?
when,
I mean, this quote's from May.
right, so it'll be, if not the end of August, then September.
Okay.
That's what we're looking at.
And then did you have the other bids?
We had the one from last year. And we were getting estimates
So
from
if-
2
if-
others.
Dephone here is going to be doing this stuff. He needs to read our procurement policy.
Yeah, I've been working with him hand in hand. Like has a copy of all that. And
I mean, there's a lot of painting contractors around, so it's
yeah,
not like
he's
it's some
spoken
exotic
to a
work.
lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, he put the word out. We have it all. It's a little bit of an awkward thing to put that in a public packet when you're dealing with private companies. you know, if there's, so I can provide that to you if you're interested in seeing the list.
Well, it should be like in the minutes here. I mean, we should be knowing that
That's a
we're
good
Like
trying to
who,
do.
who
For
contacted
Nate.
us?
Yeah, it's a good question for Nate, because when it comes to smaller local companies, there's probably some like, I don't know, it's. If a company doesn't, if
Well,
they
no,
like, we're
who we
about to give an
submitted
estimate.
bids
and then-
to, you know, who we, did anybody else submit a bid or did you just get one?
Just the one
No,
from
she said
last year.
it's just the one from
Yeah.
last year
But they
because the
couldn't
other
do the work
people
this year.
couldn't meet the
Yeah, but
prevailing
I mean,
wage
this is, again,
requirements.
this is, you know, that's 2 months old.
And we've been in touch with them. We've been in contact with
Right,
them
but he
through-
should
through
have-
This process,
Solicited 3 bids at least.
We said
we
she
did our
reached
best.
out, but
yeah.
two of the other people couldn't
Yeah.
meet the requirements.
Yeah.
Prevailing wages and the insurance requirements.
Yeah, but I
So
mean,
if you
there's,
reach out to 3
there's a
people.
lot of good, you know, there's Cook Painting. You know, I don't know what he, you know, what his network and painting contractors are. You know, we all have our niches in life, you know, I don't
Yeah.
know how much, you know, he has to do with painting.
I mean, he did a thorough job, I would
Yeah.
say. I mean, he did better than any of us could have done, that's for sure. So it was a thorough process. And my concern about,
Yeah.
so with local companies that, you know, there were a couple businesses that were going to provide estimates, but then they saw what our requirements were and then said no. I don't feel comfortable putting that information out in public packet because it might have implications for the way that.
Well,
we
no,
do
I don't, not
business.
those people. I'm more saying, okay, we should have 3 estimates, right? That, you know, if you don't have 3 estimates, then, you know, that's, to me, that's awkward.
So our procurement policy says that a good faith effort should be made to get the number.
Right.
And if not, then it's documented as to why they couldn't.
Right,
be
but so
obtained.
as for me, I'm handed this thing. I don't know that there's a good faith estimate. You know, if somebody looks back in the minutes, you got 1 bid, you approved 1 bid. So for me, I'm not comfortable. I have no idea what Defone's capabilities are that he, you know, did he beg them to come or, you know, did he call Cook Painting? You know, so there's nothing in here that tells me that he tried any of those commercial firms that,
Mhm.
Yeah, Blue Spruce Painting is.
yeah, there's a
company.
lot of, you know, painting is not.
They're
a job.
union too, so they
Yeah.
probably are prevailing wage.
Yeah. You know, so it's
So
not
I
some
think-
weird thing like it's,
I think my question is about process with this, that in the future with things like this, you know, if we run it through the finance committee, you know, if there like, is there, I hear what you're saying, so I guess that,
well, the finance committee can give you guidance, but the basis of the town board is our main structure is financial accountability of the town, right? So the finance committee is okay to appoint, but it should be the 4 or 5 of us that the stuff should run through, because that's the 4 or 5 of us is what has,
Well, that's
Really
what's
tough.
happening now.
yeah, right now, tonight,
Yeah.
right? But the finance committee can give you guidance and whatnot, but that is not a, you know, it's not the approval body,
right,
you know,
Yeah.
of the town.
Could you write some kind of, I don't know if the appropriate term would be like a memo to the town board explaining how the good faith effort
Yeah.
that was underdone
Yeah.
for us to review, obviously run it past Nate first, because I don't want to get into any issues with any companies' names getting out. I understand and respect what you're concerned about,
Mhm.
but some way for us to,
I mean, I think it's something could be of which companies were contacted. I mean, we talk about when we're mass gathering information of when information, you know, when we're looking for planning firms or things like that. We throw out names of different firms that and there's nothing wrong with that. You can say which ones were reached out to. It's not, I don't think, inappropriate. Just because they chose not to participate doesn't necessarily submit a bid. There's nothing nefarious implied by that. There are many
It could be a
reasons
reason, yeah.
a firm may not choose. They don't have the time to do it, right? If you
Yeah.
want it done this year, and you don't have availability this year, therein lies one of many reasons why somebody wouldn't submit. So maybe a narrative description of the process that was undertaken.
you're saying they declined to provide a bid.
Or,
And leave it at
in,
that.
you know, if we're gonna use the phone, then he needs to understand, and he ought to for where he works, is to say, write up something that says, I'm soliciting, prices, estimates, whatever, to do painting on, and describe the town hall. And then put it out there and maybe mail it out so that you've done a, like an open bid of some kind, right? Because it's a little different than doing your house, right? Or your private business or whatever.
Yeah.
We're
So my takeaway here from this discussion is, in the future, when it's not transparent, when we're not like slam dunk clearly meeting the procurement policy in the best way possible, that there's packet information that comes to you
Yeah,
all.
yeah,
that
something more
explains,
than
like you
that.
said, like a memo. Yeah.
Just to document it, so.
Yeah, and then there's a
Something
scope of work.
happens.
There's no scope of work with this either. I
Right,
mean, this is a small place, I get it, but
right.
so if Michael's gonna do more work, he needs to understand the formality of what we're governed by here as well.
Mhm, right. Yep, okay. Yeah, the RFP,
Yeah,
right? You probably, that should be included. So when it comes to stuff like this, yes, okay, that's my takeaway. That you
yeah,
get,
something
get
like,
that.
we did for the heat pumps or this is exaggerating, but like the bridge, but, right,
Right,
the tank work. That's an extreme, that was big dollars, but
right,
a scaled down version of that. So you can
Right.
say, oh, there's one bid because
Yeah.
I sent this out and they're the only ones that responded.
right. Yep. Yep,
That's what I would feel more comfortable
Yeah.
with.
yeah, totally. Yep,
I mean, there's more pages in our procurement policy than there is in the bid.
right. Yep. Okay, yep, that makes sense. And probably for documentation purposes, the resolution should lay out that sort of thing too.
I mean, is that something you can add and and get back in the August meeting, or does that, do we lose our place in line, so to speak?
Because this is a May quote, I would be concerned that we would be kicking, I'm not sure what their scheduling is like. So I think that it could be tricky.
What is the first August meeting? What day is that?
Well, we have another meeting in
Eighth.
July.
We have July
July, yeah.
25th and then August 10th,
Can you give them a call?
8th, and then the next one.
See what it is, and then if we can add something to that, I would be more comfortable with it.
Well, what about, if you would be, if you're comfortable with that, then maybe it could be that we could do the contract the same night, because we wouldn't be able to do a contract tonight anyway.
That's good.
And they could be, they could both be handled simultaneously. Does that make sense?
Well, this is,
Yeah,
this, would we need contract authorization if the procurement? Yes, we do, contract.
Why, probably we would. I don't actually know, I don't know.
I don't know. If we would. I think the assumption would be that if it was approved, because this, I think the resolution says we're entering into contract.
yes, it does.
Yeah, so the idea would be that
So you would.
so
sign
we'd
the
be
contract.
missing. My concern would be that we might. We
Well,
might,
okay, just quick pause. So how long do you think it would take you to pull that information together? That's, I mean, the work's already been done. It just needs to be developed into a memo and explained.
an hour?
Okay, so what I might suggest is that, because I don't want to lose, we don't want to lose the spot. But we also, I want to make sure everybody feels comfortable. How would people feel about a special town board meeting to approve a contract later
That's
this
fine.
week?
Sure.
What?
Are you bringing treats?
I can, sure. It'll be a 5-minute meeting possibly, but I will bring treats that I will buy from Loving Hands from someone else, because I'm not cooking for my kids, I'm not cooking for you. I've been at the lake and I've been doing frozen food, so it's been a treat for me. So what?
Yeah,
is-
just see how that plays out and then just do like you've done before, send us an email or something.
Can I put a holding pattern on, if there's a date this week, if like either Thursday or Friday mornings work for, I know you're out Thursday, so it probably should be there. What about Friday morning
That works.
That will work.
I'm open after 9.
after 9? So can we do it at 9? Or is that too late for everybody?
That's fine.
Unless you want 2 kids. Then I could do it now, before then.
Oh, yeah, I need to.
Camp drop is 9.
I gotta keep and watch everybody. Carissa, is 9 something that you could do?
Michelle and I have a budget meeting at 8
So,
until.
It was supposed to go till 10. But we could just do
a
8,
5-minute intermission.
8 to 9. Oh, right, yeah, right.
Yeah, it's not gonna be.
It's your
long.
coffee break.
it is, and I'll bring coffee. Or we'll make coffee and I'll bring something else. Does that work?
That's fine by
Yes,
me.
Good solution, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being flexible. We'll do that on Friday.
Friday at 9.
9 a.m., yeah. Okay, anything more on that topic? Anything else you want to see in that document? Okay. Great. That brings us to the planning board alternate appointment. At the last meeting, Rich circulated appointment for an application. And I don't know, is it Greg or Rob? Greg? I think it's Greg. Mr. Greg's application. It's been reviewed by our town planner. It was provided board members.
And he showed up to the meeting too.
Yes, but yes.
And he showed up to the meeting, yeah.
Oh, to the planning board meeting?
No,
he was
he was
here.
here.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, no, I know he was
Yeah.
here. I didn't know if I was at the planning board
Yeah.
meeting, so I was wondering if that's when you meant to. But he has been, I know, attending the planning board meetings.
Good.
And so if everyone else is comfortable, I would move to appoint Mr. Gregg to serve as an alternate to the planning board through December 31st, 2023.
Second.
Any further discussion, other than a thanks to Rich for his recruitment efforts? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then I wasn't anticipating that this would be a long conversation, but the board was provided with the draft 2022 audit. The auditors will be coming for a presentation at the next meeting in July. I wondered if there were any questions that you in particular issues you particularly were hoping that they would speak to while they're here. If so, I would be happy to pass those along. I mean, certainly doesn't preclude you from asking new questions when they're here, but if there's anything in particular you'd like them to emphasize during their time, I would invite those.
I didn't go through the whole thing, but I don't know if you looked at
No,
it.
yeah, I looked at it, but I didn't really have any questions. I mean, they present information in a slightly different way than we have in our books, you know, they mush things together that are apart in the AUD. So to me, that AUD is a little more enlightening than their statements, which follow, you know, generally accepted
Yeah. Accounting.
accounting,
principles. Yeah.
reporting and all
Yeah.
that.
Is
So,
mush a generally?
You learned that in accounting school. I like their disclaimer. That was new.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, that was a whole paragraph
was,
of
it was
disclaimer.
great.
I was like, good Lord, are you
What are
responsible
you
for
doing?
anything?
They got a new insurance broker, I can tell you, I'm sure that's what
Oh
happened.
my God. I was looking at that. I was like, wow,
What
this
can
is,
you cover? Sure, 'cause
I'm gonna
you're-
plagiarize this one. Anybody holds me accountable at work again, I'm gonna have this whole
You
thing.
can put it at the bottom of all your emails.
That's right. Oh, goodness. Okay.
I don't think I have any questions right now, but if we're gonna have the presentation, the next meeting, I'll dig in a little more
Yeah,
and
read the rest.
send
or
you
something.
some questions.
Yeah,
ahead of time
absolutely.
If there's anything
Yeah.
specific I have a question on or want to see in the presentation.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I appreciate that. It's always nice to get a presentation that's actually useful to the.
Now I'm trying to remember, is this the one we asked them to do, or is this because of the bridge, or
No,
what
this
was?
is, this is the one we've asked them to do. We started budgeting now
For-
for
Every
it
year.
done
Every year.
annually,
Yeah.
because it's less expensive. We had to do the one for 2021 because of the bridge, correct? And then now now that they have all the information, doing a
Will they
refresher.
focus in a particular area? If we're doing it annually, will they kind of go deeper into,
Not unless we ask them to.
I mean, how did it feel from the inside? I mean, did it,
It was pretty, I mean, compared to previous years, it was really smooth because they're not, the bumpiness around doing it every 2 to 5 years really gets smoothed out if they have to, what's it called, Mary? They have to verify the number, our starting numbers. In order to do that, they have to do some digging if they
Oh.
haven't been around.
Right,
here,
they
so-
can't really certify that this is, that, because you usually have comparative statements, so you got last year to this year. And if you didn't audit last year, it's a little more work.
Mhm.
You know, you have to go back and verify those numbers, you know.
So in theory, next year would be smoother, even more smoother, since they already
Yeah,
done
because
all
they
that back
already did,
legwork.
they don't have to look at 2023.
Right, verified it.
They already,
Okay.
yeah,
or 2022.
Well, and it also helps, I mean, we're fortunate to have a bookkeeper who is a former auditor herself, and so, I mean, like, it's just so
Good,
fantastic. Yeah.
Good.
So. Great, but if any more questions come up, then please send them my way. And then, so upcoming events, we will add it is, what is it, July 14th, I believe, is at 9 AM. We're gonna have a special town board meeting.
Bastille Day.
Oh, that's right. You are correct. Maybe I will bring something French. I took French.
Macaron.
That's croissant. Yeah. That's fun. And then we have our regular, oh, and I didn't put actually our board retreat is in there. Oh, I did put our board retreat. I'm sorry, I did. So we've got 2 meetings in August, but we've canceled the regular second meeting. And that brings us to, awesome. The
Minutes?
minutes, that brings us to the minutes. Okay, did anybody have a chance to review them? We had, Chris has circulated or posted the minutes for June 27th, that was our regular meeting. Did anybody have any alterations they needed to the minutes? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
second,
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We do not have any board notifications, but I leave that on there mostly so I don't forget in case we do. Budget modifications. We do have a budget modification.
no, that's
That's your,
vouchers.
yes, your vouchers. Did you, your budget modifications right
Okay,
there?
in front of me.
So, Michelle, would you mind, because I appreciate you sticking around, would you mind walking us through our budget modifications, please?
Sure. So the first one has to do with the scoping phase of the Black Diamond Trail. We got our first bill from the from Barton and LaJudas. And because you know, we have a contract with them that's up to, and because this wasn't a budgeted item, the way that I chose to represent it here in this budget modification is that we'll come back to the board each time that we have to pay them, just because we don't want to, it's the cleanest way to do it, and it's the best way to keep you up to date about how that project's going, the expense that we have. So we had money budgeted in the engineering CE, and this is the overage that covers it. This portion represents, we're increasing revenue associated with the ITCTC, you know, the Ithaca Tompkins County Transportation Council has 2.5% set aside from federal funds. So this is actually federal funds that gets funneled through ITCTC. But it's I don't want to call it easy money because but it's reimbursable money that there's very little reporting for us to do, so that's what that is. The liability insurance, this is the highway bond permit, which we'll have to get an insurance broker in here to explain what it is, but essentially allows the highway to function within state highway boundaries. Probably some mowing, for instance. That's coming out of contingency. As a reminder, our cyber insurance went over, so we maxed out that insurance line. So here we are, $100 budget modification. And then the last one is the survey that was done for the rec fields parcel. That money's coming directly from the assigned fund that's associated with the Trumansburg Community Rec money that we've been setting aside for years, so.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions related to budget modifications? If not, I'd make a motion to approve them as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Brings us down to payment of audited claims. Our little Part sheet, one in the font size that Rich likes. He likes.
I'm not far behind him.
I can see fine up close from the distance where I get to show them now.
Resolved that the Ulysses Town Board has reviewed and approved the payment of claims for vouchers numbered 269 through 308 in the amount of $168,298.08.
Are you moving
So
on?
moved.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
All right.
Thank you. And now we are back again to privilege of the floor. Is there any, well, there's
Scan the
nobody
floor.
online. We're gonna scan the floor. Is there?
Is there nobody online tonight? Kristen?
There's no one else online?
Linda left.
Left.
We need some controversy, Caitlin.
No, we don't.
Don't, careful what you wish for, Michael,
Carry
tonight.
it back.
Have you ever listened to the Enfield Town Board?
What town board?
Enfield.
Oh,
Oh, dear. No,
I
I'm
don't know
not-
if it's
I'm not
quieted
inviting
down,
that.
but they used to be so entertaining.
On that note, we was, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
A second, thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent, we don't have.
We were
Rich.
waiting for Rich.
Exactly.
Problem.
Yeah, he should have, we
Do a
should have
premiere.
recorded it. That's what we should have done. We could have played it back. But you definitely stick
I do, I'll take this, thank you so much.
with it.
So
Is-
tables need to be moved,
That's-
Kristen?
Yeah.